Hello and welcome to another really exciting session of our live Power BI class. I hope you're able to gain a lot from the last conversation, the last time, we were able to speak on things. I really had a nice time and I hope you did as well. If you missed out on it, that's nothing to be worried about. Just simply move down. You see the previous areas which we've discussed. And funny enough, we haven't really touched on so much to say that you have really missed a great deal on. Okay, so now getting on to today's discourse, we will be picking up from where we left things last week. And I'm just quickly going to share share this. Okay, so now a brief recap of what we're speaking to was we're looking at the data set and to historic data from the Olympic competition, right? From the Olympic competition, and basically we touched on the fact that the link for the source of data has also been shared. I imported it, very using CSV tool. That was what I used to import this data set. Moving on, we looked at the card visual, which was basically showing us a total count of athletes and this here, this column, you could call it the tab, keeps your data for you. Okay, so this here, we looked at this and this card visual from the visuals that we're just playing around with. This card visual typically helps to just display that, and we pull that total count of IDs, and we worked with the assumption that an ID would uniquely identify an athlete. Okay. Thereon, we went on to look at different slicers. Okay. We had this slicer, which is in this grid format, and then we had this, which allows us to drag it or impute preferred timelines. Okay. There we looked at this table, based on the the seasons. Okay, so we know now that we have summer games and we have winter Olympic. All right, so we had this table and we had also discussed that this table was using a visual. We could use different visuals for this, and so we used the table visual here. And then for this, this was where we left things off, where we talked about categorizing it based on the gender, right? The males and the females as we have them in the Olympics. And now, before moving on from that conversation, we I tried to explain that when we're working with a data set, we're typically using the fact that you have an intended audience, okay, who you intend to share your reports with, to share this processed data, which is information with. So you try to assume what could be the interest of this audience, what could be the interest of the person viewing this report, which I'll be sharing with, and we kicked off with, of course, you should have that huge title, and this we're able to achieve this using the text box, right? To just type in something arbitrarily for this. Now, taking a step further, if you have tried to get your hands, in on this data set, you would also have noticed a few things. Okay, you'd have noticed a few things, and one of the things you would have noticed would be that the countries are not uniquely typed out. So, for instance, there are some countries that have duplicate entries, and they have an affix of a suffix of hyphen and a number. That we are going to also look at why that is the case, why they would have such suffix to the country column. But I want to just pair on this particular visual here where we use the table. Okay, we use the table for the categorization. Now, in as much as it shows this, but is it as visible as we want? Something we can use to enhance it. So I would just quickly say to try my hands on a multi-row card. Now, this is a card that just shows one at a time, But then luckily we also have a visual tool, a multi-row card. And if we just select it, it tries to interpret. If it can work with it, it just tries to work to just perform that transformation automatically on its own. And if it can't, we're going to either see an error message, or then we see that we need to provide more input as expected of that particular visual. So using the multi-row card, I'm just going to select, to click on this here, and we can see that there's a little shift. Okay, so now we have summer, we have the number, I'm saying count, we have winter. It's not so visible. Now to adjust this, I'm just going to drag this a bit, pull this down. Now things I don't want displaying here, I think this count is also covering for space. Okay, since it's covering for space, what I'm going to do now is to quickly come to this bit here where it says to format. We talked about formatting our visuals. Okay, formatting our visuals. So if you can't hear me, I hope you can all hear me. Okay, great. So now I'm going to try to see how we can take off this count so we have more um design space, like I shared, friends in the design profession will call it real estate, so we can have more space to walk around with. So I'm just going to see how we can tinker with this here. So I have here under the visual, the cards. Now let me start with this bit here. It all seems okay. The category labels are on. Now what happens if I toggle this off? Let's see. Yes, so that was that count, and now that particular bit is off. Okay, now but I'm still not okay with this. Now someone might be okay with it, but I'm still not okay with this. I just want something a bit more to read, and what I want to read is basically for these numbers to have this proper formatting. Okay, that's what I want to read, for the numbers to have proper formatting, in the sense that this is about 200 and something thousand, and then 48,000. I know it's not good to have the person viewing your report to peer in to see if this is a million, if this is in thousands, or if it's in hundreds of thousands, as the case may be. So in instances like this, quickly, sorry, I'm also monitoring the metrics of this on my handheld here. Okay. So what I'll do is I'm going to come over here to see what we can do about this. Okay. Coming over here. Okay. I'm seeing someone saying you can't see on the screen. Okay, let's try to remedy that quickly, please. Okay, can we see the screen now, please? Can you see? Okay. Oh, great. Okay. Let me know if if you're still having troubles viewing the screen, please. Okay, so okay, for the benefit of those who skipped the bit of the screen display, I'm just going to go over this quickly, right? So this was the card visual. So let me just quickly undo this, what I did previously. Okay, great. I just got confirmed the screen now. Okay, so this is where we stopped, all right? The card visual, and these are just slices to work with the times. Okay, and we said we're in our previous session, we said we're going to go over to cover a few more things about around it. Okay, so the card, I said we use it to just display particular information, right? Something that you feel is critical, it's important to your audience, right? So typically you may want just a particular value, and we use numbers. These numbers could be expressed in their full value or a percentage. It's pretty much your call, okay? But try to restrict it to one particular value at a time, so it just kind of helps for emphasis, and like I shared earlier, we tend to read from left to right, and then you may want to now say, okay, we read from top to bottom, right? So that's why we have the title first, or now this card, and then we had these other things here, these which are slices, and we're going to touch a bit more on them as we progress. And then we had this table, to display of athletes that participated in it based on the seasons. Okay, the summer games and then the winter Olympics as well. And then we also had this visual, right, this chart here to also show us participation based on gender. Okay, now I said to just improve on that on this particular table here to make it a bit more pronounced. I would be more comfortable if we could utilize another visual element, right? And luckily for us, Power BI also use the card and the one above. So now we're just going to use the multi-row card. Excuse me. So I'm just quickly going to just select it like I had done previously, and then we see that the appearance of this, all right, just changes. Okay, the appearance of this just changes immediately. Now, to have more space, for other items to show, I have to look for a way to take this label of count off, right? To take this label of count off, because not all your readers, or would I say the audience, the person you're sending this to, would have the time to scroll in this little detail. Okay, so it's good to make everything as clear as possible. So for that, I'm just going to go to the format pane here, and then where we have our category labels, and to toggle this off. Okay, so now that count bit is off, and we can just go on with this. Okay, so now moving on with that, the next thing we're going to look at here now is how we can format these numbers, so that just looking at it, you can tell if it's 2 million, if it's 2,000, if it's 20 something thousand or not. Okay, and to do that, still we're going to just look at all of these things here, to try to work with all of the values that we're seeing displayed here. And I'm just toggling it so you can see that it's not always clear, like in terms of how you want it to appear. Okay, so now where it's not appearing properly, let's just take this off. I think I also have another response. Someone can't see the screen as well. Can't see the screen too. Okay, okay, you can see the screen now. Excellent, excellent. That's great. That's great. Okay, all right. So we just proceed from where we stopped. All right. So now it's about having these numbers, appear properly. Okay. So what do we do about those numbers and the way they're appearing? If we're not okay with it, we can we can also do something about it. I don't like to leave my values like that, so I like to format them. And let's see, show value, we don't want this, so I'm just going to skip this for now and move on to other bits, and then we're going to get back to it much later on. Okay, but this should be where we're going to, and we'll come back to it, where we're going to play around with it, within this call out values, because that's typically what we're looking out for. Okay, so now let's look at this visual which we have here, the male and the female. Now for the male, the colors, now even though it's easy to see here in terms of the the width of the bars. But the colors, it will also help if you could just have distinction for the colors, okay, and the colors of the bars. So the male, you could maintain this thick color, and then perhaps a lighter color where it has more faint in it for the female gender, okay. And to do that, we just move to where we have our formats, okay. You can do this from basically where we can format our data from. Okay, so we can come here and we have our y-axis, our x and y-axis already have that bit all sorted out. So we're just going to work with the colors, okay. The colors, okay, that's true. We don't even have, I didn't select the legend, okay. So I'm just going to impute that bit quickly in the legend, okay. So it has that bit there. So I'm going to just drag this right and impute it in here, and now we have colors. But I just want the colors to be something that we want, not something that was automatically just assigned to it, okay. So for this, I'm going to click on the bars here and says not all, but just to select a particular one. So I'm going to just work with the female and then change the color to something. I think this would work. Okay, this will work, and we'll just keep this here for now and proceed to another visual, another item in the data. Now, all this while we've just been working with the data as it is. We have not tried to clean the data. That's a term that is also used to clean the data of any sort. We haven't done that. We've just been working with it exactly as it was given to us, from the source there, which I've shared in the link. You can also feel free to check that out. Now, sometimes where you want to do more cleaning. Now, if we just click on this tabular view here to see the entire data set. Now, look at where we have the list of the countries, under the column team. If I'm to just click on this drop down, which is a filter, to look at the countries, you see that you have countries or teams, names of teams that have this kind of need extra characters to it, right? So you have this Hamlet -3, -7, and it goes on for more popular teams or countries as the case may be. So you have you're seeing for Belgium, for Belarus, and the likes. Now, one of the things we want to do is, because of a goal that I intend for us to achieve later on, which is to have these teams that are representatives of countries to be also be grouped according to the continent that they belong to. Okay, so to do that, I need to clearly or like trying to use the word to clean it up. So everything that is France is just France and not a France hyphen this or France hyphen two. Okay, it's just France. So to do that, we're just going to work with the Power Query engine, which I said was one of the major things powering the Power BI platform, Power Query, which we use to clean the data. So to clean the data, we're just going to say transform, okay? Transform the data here. And now it launches the Power Query editor for us to get our hands on this data set, in terms of direct manipulation or cleaning. So let's just work with the term cleaning for now. Okay. So the column of interest at this time is this team here, and what I want to do is in cleaning this. That now there are different ways to go about this. Okay, there are different ways, a ton of ways to go about this. But what I want to typically achieve here at the end of the day is to just have a country such as, let's just quickly so you can just have it. Now look at France. I want one France. I don't want France this and then France hyphen one. Okay. So what I want is just everything to be France. Now I'm going to take you through a long route, not so long, but just stick with it. Just work with me here. So I have this column highlighted or selected, and I'm going to just say transform column. Okay. Now, if you use things like Excel or other productivity tools, you'll be familiar with find and replace. Okay, and that's what we're just typically going to do here. Now we have it's just somewhere here, so you see replace values. Okay, now you can say replace values, or you can say split column. I'm going to use split column. Okay, so I'm just going to say split by delimiter. All right, split by delimiter, which a delimiter is a character that you get to specify. Okay, now it's not a space. What I want is a hyphen. So I'm saying custom, so it allows me to impute the character I want. Now I'm not going to say one or two, so you should just split it with this hyphen. Now you can also select where the position of this delimiter is. I don't want it at each occurrence because some teams could correctly have a hyphen in between them. So I want it at the rightmost part, right, based on what we've seen. So that's just what I'm going to select here, rightmost delimiter, and then I'm going to click OK. All right. So now what happens is another column is created. So we have this team.2. The ones that are okay just have these null entries automatically assigned to them. But if I should click on this drop down like a filter, I can see that I have 1, 2. If I even click on this load more, I just give it a few seconds to actually load us more. So you can see we have more, more values that were also splitted into this next column. Now, having achieved that, I can simply just delete this column because I don't need this column, right? I just wanted to clean up the original team's column. So I can just delete this column, or I can leave it if I need it for something else. For now, I'm just going to remove the column, all right? And rename this to just maintain the team. So it's still back to the team. We're going to go back to the home and say close. So there's a drop down of close, so automatically it just closes and applies to it. So there are pending changes. So just give it a while, or you can click on this, and then it's performing these changes while we're going about our activities. Okay. Okay. So we have that bit. Okay, we have that bit. Next, we're going to look at. It's still loading up. Okay, let's just give it a second. Let's see. Okay, I still have some complaints of just the screen. Okay, I think I'm going to have to share that again. Okay, so let's just quickly do that bit again. So let's just share the screen again, please. Okay. Okay, see the screen now. I'm just going to reopen this. Okay, Okay. I didn't response. Okay, thank you, the sky. Okay, thank you, the sky. Okay, so what we currently have now. Thanks. I'm sorry you couldn't see the screen earlier. Sorry you couldn't see it earlier. I'm glad you can see it now. It's perfect. Okay, just let me know if you can't see it, so we can just quickly ensure that everyone is on the same page. Okay, so now we have our countries, okay, properly highlighted there. Use a metrics visual, which I explained, for folks who are more familiar with the pivot table, Excel, or other spreadsheet applications. The metrics, it's like a pivot table. Okay, so with the metrics visual now, if we just select it, okay, we just select it and we already see, it has this grid-like format, like a table. Now we can select the team, all right, so which is our countries. Okay, so we can select team, which is our countries, and we're not seeing all those hyphens, but they are really okay. And you could just also select your IDs for the values, okay, the count of IDs for the values. And if we, yes, so it sorts it based on the the country that has the highest number of athletes down to, basically in descending order. Now, in as much as this is, it doesn't really capture it the way you would want it to be. Okay, and now let's just play around with this, and let's take out this current, the count of countries that we have, so we can see the number of countries that we have in this particular visual. So I'm just saying count, right? Count this thing, just shows we have 951. Now that's not something that you want to just capture in here, right? So it's something you want to think about. 951 distinct teams. Now it's most likely that these 951 distinct teams, are representatives of countries. Another a good way of grouping these countries would be to identify them by the continents that they belong to. Now, from the data set, we do not have a column that displays the continent. Okay, so that means we would have to work with another data set. Now, there are different ways you could think about this. You could write a conditional statement. It's called DAX. You could write a DAX function or a DAX formula with if, an if with condition set. So if it falls within this, it should belong to this. That would be relatively long. Or you could just import a list of countries and continents to your application. Okay, and I think I'm just going to go for the other one of importing. Okay, so we can just simply do that by get data. Now, primarily before this time, we these are current data sets, the CSV. So we used the CSV, we imported it as a CSV. But in this case here, like I shared in the link below, this data set is actually online. Okay, we're just going to import it directly from the site. So I have the URL. So I'm just going to paste it in here. I already copied it in. I paste it in here. You can also see it in the description. Okay. And I'm going to say okay, and just follow the prompt that would follow from this example. Okay. Okay, so just give it a few seconds to try to interpret what it's fetching from the web. And while that's going on, let's just get back to chat box to ensure everyone is on the same page. Yes, we all are. Excellent. Okay. Okay. Some persons might not be able to see this bit of my screen. If you can't see this bit of my screen, what I would encourage you to do is try to simulate this action yourself. Okay, and what's currently displaying on my screen, that you can't see clearly at this point, is I have dialog boxes, right? So it's a dialog. I'm trying to import this data from the web. So I have options of HTML tables, suggested tables, and I have text. These are like three broad um, divisions or categories. Now I'm looking at the HTML tables where I have list of countries by continent, I have geographical regions, I have countries or areas. I'm going to select the first one, which says list of countries by continent. Okay, that doesn't seem to give me what I want. So let's select countries or area, and I can also preview. Luckily, I can preview. So this gives me what I want. I can see countries. I can also see their continent and other information. I'm just going to load this directly so we can see it as well. I'm just going to load this directly. Just give it a second while it loads. Okay. I hope you're seeing this bit here. Okay, so you can see that changes are taking place. Excellent. Okay, great. So countries or areas, so it's just basically loading in this data which are just important. Okay, so it's evaluating and doing all of its magic. Okay. So 249 rules loaded. Now, if I should move over to this data tab and just click on this bit to collapse this, so we're just going to see that we now have two data sets. All right, remember this is data. So we have two data sets. So we have the one for athletes, and then we have this for countries or areas. So one of the things you've picked up on this here is that we can import our data. We've been able to import our data from CSV. From CSV, you can also import in Excel, from Excel, or Google Sheets or the cloud. And more importantly, in this example here, we've imported directly from a web page, okay, from a website. Now, if we just look at this here, for you to just see the columns here, I'm just going to click on this tab, the table view, for us to see this data set as a table. Okay, I'm going to select it, countries or area, so you can see it has this serial numbering, from 1 to 200, is it 200? 249 to 249 countries. It has its alpha codes. And what is really, really, really important to me, I want to use here for is this continent column. Okay, the continent column. Now, I'm going to just come back to this view to explain a few things. Now, this continent column, which is the main area of interest at this point, right? Which is the main area of interest at this point. We need to try to link it with this data set that has the countries under this column team. Okay. Now, there are different ways we can go about this. You recall earlier on, we said we can use the model view to establish relationships. We're not going to use that. What we're going to use here, we're going to still work with the Power Query. Okay, we're going to still work with the Power Query, and for this Power Query, we're simply going to merge these two tables. Merge them like a new one. Now, don't let it confuse you. Just let it soak in. And you would understand it. You understand it more. Okay. Now, right clicking and all of these things, you're seeing edit query and all these options here. One of the things I want to explain to you is the way the Power Query sees what we call the data set, or a table. It sees it sometimes as just a query, a single query, which you're performing multiple actions on. So if we have this query, this particular table here is just saying it as this name, athletes underscore events, and it's saying it as that query. All the actions that were taken to transform it, like we did one recently, when we came to the transform data here, right? And it launched this Power Query editor. I really hope you can see this Power Query editor. I hope you can see this Power Query editor. If you can't see this Power Query editor, that would be a big concern. That'll be a bit really bit of concern to me if you can't see it. It's really important for me that you see this Power Query Editor. Now, if you look by the left here, we have query. So it's just like I said, Atlas underscore events, countries or areas, what we are calling the tables. The Power Query Editor is just seeing it as a query. But here now, I want to merge these queries. Okay, so you have this bit of combine and all of that. There are different areas where you can see all of this. So there's merge queries, there's append queries. What are the differences, the nuances between these two? We'll speak more on this much later on. So I'm just going to say merge queries as new. There's a difference, all right? Merge queries as new, just to create as a fresh one that we'll be working with. So I've clicked on that bit, and now it has shown me the first query, which is our data set, all right, or our table or our data table. So I have my first data set, Atlas underscore events. The instructions are pretty straightforward. It says select tables and matching columns to create a merged table. So you see here now, it's now using the word table, but initially it was saying query. Okay, so it's just good to just know what it's referring to so you don't get confused. So I'm just going to select this column team here, and then this next drop down, I'm going to select the next table or query or data source or data set, the countries or area. And I'm going to also select the column that is common. All right. So what is common to these two? Because a relationship is about like having common grounds. What's the thing that identifies me and you? And in this case here now, it's Power BI, right? Or we could call it knowledge. So I'm just going to also select this country column here. Now I have all of these prompts. You can just select ignore, right? Because depending on your use, now I'm not going to straight away tell you to just always ignore. Say ignore privacy level checks for this file. You would expose sends it to an unauthorized person. So you know the data you'll be dealing with and how you want to grant access to it. Okay, so I'm just going to work with this and say click OK. So now you have option join kinds. All right, so there's the left. All of these kinds of join is it's really, really, really interesting. Okay, so just stick with the left bit, and much later on in our conversation, we're going to look at how the little differences between all of these join types. Okay, we're going to look at the difference in all of these join types. Okay, so now we have this merged queries, and it has this name merge. So I'm just going to rename it, and just call it joint. Let's just call it joint. Mr. I there. I'm going to call this joint, say close and apply. Excuse me. Okay. So now it's just loading all the queries or tables, and that's this mini window that I have on my screen. You might not be able to see that bit. Not sure if YouTube allows that sort of sharing, but don't be alarmed. I'm just explaining to you what's going on, beyond what you can currently see now. You'd see a third bit, just down below that country or areas. You see a third one that says joint. It's either going to come in above it or it's going to come in just beneath it. It's just a second. I think I have some feedback here. Okay, so Tony, can you see the screen now? Okay, can you see the screen now? Okay, beautiful. Or third query or third data set under this our data tab right here. Okay, so now this count of team that we had here under this card visual, I'm just going to delete this visual altogether. Okay, and try to use a grouping of the teams, but based on the continents that they represent. Okay, we're just still working with this here. So for this, I'm going to all visual. We could use a normal a column chart such as this one. So I'm just going to select continent. Do I have continent on this? Just a second. I think I may have missed a step here. Let's look at this. I have continent here, and on the join, so I have continent. I don't think I have continent here. Okay, so something is still missing. Something is still missing. Okay. All right, so let's just get back to this and still sticking to continent here. And I'm going to just pull this continent to the legend fields. Okay, so we don't have much going on there, and try to pull this down here. So, and just expand on this. Okay, to expand on this. Now, bear in mind that these values are not exactly correct. It's just what I intend to display here is actually the ID of the athletes based on the countries. Okay, and that's what the joint is supposed to achieve. So, but basically, the picture I'm trying to paint here is where you have that kind of data set that you have the countries, the teams. So rather than just display it as the countries, it's be better expressed. When you're putting it as a whole here, you express them as a continent, a group. The continent serves as a perfect way of grouping these countries. To say, oh, Africa, this is how Africa performed, this is how Europe performed, and the likes, as the case may be. Now I'm just going to quickly try to remedy that relationship between these two tables, the athletes events and the countries or areas. Okay, and how are we going to do that? So we're just going to quickly transform this data. Okay, transform this data, and also we're going to need our continent column from this joint here. We're going to need the continent column where we perform that joint operation on. Yes, so we're done with that. So countries or areas. So I have this now. If you observe, all these other columns just have this drop down such as this, but this appearance is different. So what it's showing you here is the kind of value that is in each row is a table on its own. So I'm just going to click on this, these pointy arrows, if you can't see this. So it expands it. Okay, so I'm just going to say, to skip this here and say expand. Okay, so it expands it for me, and now I'm going to say close, and on that joint, for that to just quickly load so you can see the desired effect. Okay, so you can see the screen now. Okay, I still have some fields that you can't see Power BI screen. Please give me a second to try to let's just try to reshare for everyone to see. And okay, can we see this now? Okay, great. All right, so now if you observe this joint table that is reloaded now has more columns, and two columns that are really important to me right now is themes, right, and the columns for continent. So I'm still going to go back to that visual, the column chart here, and I'm going to select continent. Okay, now I selected continent, x-axis. I'm going to select continent. Let's just move this from this x-axis first to the legend. Okay, and then values, right? I want it to be based on the countries, the countries. So let's just, where do we have teams? Yes, teams. Okay, so where we have teams. And moving my continent to my x-axis again. Okay, great. So now let's just blow this up a bit. Let's blow this up a bit. Let's blow this up a bit, and I would like data labels. All right, I like data labels to be on. All right, just data labels to be on, so we can see all of this. So we have one, there's blank. Okay, we're going to look at that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This seems just about right. Okay, now by right I mean based on the historical data that we have for the teams. Now we know that there are some teams, which are not country types, as you saw. So it's rightfully would allocate it to this blank category. Now, if you do not want to have blank in any of your data sets, such as this, we have filter. I set continent is all. So you could just come in. You want everything except the blanks, just such as this. Okay, you see automatically it has taken that effect here. So I'm just going to collapse this so we have more breathing space. Okay, and from what about the formatting, we can edit our title, take it off completely, depending on what you want. I'm just going to leave this now for your imagination. Now, one of the last things I just want to just quickly show is I want to delete this so I can have space. Is in terms of the medals. Okay, so typically there are three kinds of medal that can be won at the Olympics. Okay, it's either you're winning the gold, silver, or the bronze, as at the time of this recording. Okay, so and luckily we have a column for the medal table. It's also you can also find it from our original data source, this athlete event here. Okay, so perhaps you want to also have a visual to capture that. All right, to say, hey, based on what. All right, so now based on what do you want to show how medals have been won? Okay, excuse me. Do you want to show that based on the continents like we have here? Okay, or do you want to show that based on just generally to say, hey, this number of medals have been won? So it's all in there for you to just tamper with. So um, you can use something like this. Let's just replicate another column chart to say medal. We have medal here. We have medal here. I'm just going to say for those who've won. So I'm just going to use the IDs, right? And then for the legend, I'm also going to just drag the medal again for the legend and just pull this here. Now, the NA seems to have most allocation to it, and then we have values for gold, bronze, and silver. Now, because of how much it is for the NA, visually, the distortion just really makes it look like the others are just the same. But if based on what we've just learned from the filters, we know that we can come to filter, right, to say, hey, we don't want to see for the NAs. Okay, we don't want to see for the earnings, we just want to see for these other parties here. And seeing the values, we can also just impute the labels so we can see, that, oh, they all have equal share, 13,000, 13,000, perhaps just little fractions, right? 13,372, 13,295, and 13,116. Now, this in itself does not really say much, right? It doesn't really say much. It's good is expressed, either in its exact values for to show that 13,000. A visual of this nature would not really capture it for you. What if you were trying to apply this to the continent? The continent, right? Now that would help to express it, to say, but based on the continent, who won what more? Now I'm just going to add a continent to the x to one of the continent column, right? And typically I would have to use this other data set here, because just dragging it here, you can't determine relationship between this. So I'm just going to just delete this visual and use this joint one here now to say, hey, stacked, pull this up here, and we also have our continent. Okay, for the x-axis, I also want the metals. Okay, also, and typically for the white, for the legend, the metals already in there for the legend. You want to leave them, that's fine. I'm going to pull the athlete bits, which is the IDs, into the y-axis, and then drag for the filters. Okay, so continents, again, we're not selecting all of the blanks for the continent, right? And then for the metals, we're also taking off the NAs, of the NAs for the metals. Now looking at this, we can just see from glance that in terms of in continent wise, in terms of medals won, generally Europe seems to have much of the numbers, but the colors now also matters, like for us to just distinct, like, hey, who's doing more where. So it's good in this kind of instance to now edit, your colors, the colors that you want, those columns there, so we just say select, say for silver, let's start with silver. Silver seems really easy in terms of coloring, so you can just select anything close to ash, something like this, or you want to look for something really shiny, you just say silver. Okay, now you can just go over it for other ones. All right, so I'm just going to say bronze, but I think bronze and gold, the color variation, they're not so far off. Okay, now you may want to just check, like I said, online resources to help you with color codes. Like I said, if you click on this bit, you're able to just enter the color codes, or if you know how to really work with all of this stuff here, you can drag to see a good fit. Okay, so if you feel this is going to do it for you for bronze, or this for bronze, some persons may want to tilt to something else, or just between us. All right, just between us, we're just going to settle for this. Okay, we're just going to settle for this for the bronze, and then for the gold, we're going to make it a bit reddish, so just come over here, and okay, this seems to do it for bronze than the other way around. So I'm just going to copy this hex code here and set this for bronze. Okay, I'm just going to copy this hex code and set it for bronze. This will be for gold, and then for the bronze, I'm going to use this. For the bronze, sorry, yes, sure, yeah. So these are what we're going to use for the bronze, and for the gold, I'm going to go with this. I'm going to go with this. I'm going to go with this. But you would also agree, like, it doesn't really look quite finished yet, because at this point it's sorting it in terms of bronze, gold, silver, whereas it should be the other way. It should be bronze, silver, gold, or gold, silver, bronze, right? Now, one of the ways you can remedy something like this is to write a DAX function, but basically creating another column where you're ranking these values. Think of it as data types, where you have nominal data, you have ordinal data. So you just assign values. So if it's gold, you can say give it 1; if it's bronze, 3; if it's silver, 2. And then you sort this this column based on ascending or descending order, as you saw in previous examples. Okay, that would help to just give you a clue in terms of how to arrange this. So when if you do something like that, your visuals here would tell a better story. Okay, it will tell a better story than what we currently have. But arbitrarily, this is just you expressing these medals that have been won. And again, you can always go back to edit your titles. I'll always encourage you to not leave your titles the way they currently are now. To go back, click on this bit here, and edit the titles based on what you feel best. Okay, so you can just name this um, performance. You want to make it bold, just click out of it, so we can just see something a bit different. Okay, from here on here now, you can now build on for it. If you recall, we're trying to just imagine that we had different kinds of audience. So we're saying like, hey, perhaps we want to appeal to a particular audience, a particular demographic. And your point you're trying to raise is that, hey, I feel that we need to encourage female participation in the games. Okay, now, based on the fact that we did not limit this other chart here to the filters. If I select the male, for instance, here now, I'm just clicking on just this male bit here, nothing is really happening. But if I should click on Europe here, see how the values, Europe is the only thing highlighted here. But I'm just going to just click out of it and have another visual that I can use to select by continent. Okay, since I already have this my joint here, so this is my joint, so I can just say my filters, my which is the slicer visual here. So I'm just going to select continent. Okay, continent, and we can select how we want it to appear. Okay, here I want it to be more of a drop down than to be a drop down, not the way it is here. So you can come to this visual or general bit here to just select how you want that to be. I don't want it to be like this. I want it to be a list, not in this display. So this, let's see this single select on, close this up. So layout, grid arrangement. So I want to be single row, sorry, single column, cards, table. It all just seems to want to fit into one. But this is not just how I want it to be. So let's just take it back to grid, max row shown, single row, single column. Okay, fine. I think I'm just going to change take it as a grid for now, for the time being, and and also take off the ones that are not, they can't be found. So we just see the 6 of them. And I'm just going to pull it right here, collapse this so we can have more space. And for it to select to see if we have changes. Yes, we do. We do have changes. So that's fine. Now, the last bit I just want to really touch on quickly before we wrap this up is on the fact that most times, from what I've seen, I'm just going to collapse this here, is that people tend to focus on creating a dashboard, and try to assume that a dashboard would suffice to be a report. No, the dashboard is just a dashboard. It's basically like you're just putting a summary of information that you think would appeal to your audience. So your audience wants a summary as much as possible, but the person should have to go through that you to see like you're trying to tell something. Like I said, the Power BI tool is not merely a presentation tool, it's an intelligence tool. Okay. So from the data that you've gathered, the goal is that you're looking at the data and you're identifying what we call patterns, right? Things that you feel like, hey, looking at these numbers here now, I feel like, oh, look at how this, just looking at it visually, the males, really participate in the Olympics more than the females. Why is that? You're looking at this visual here that says, hey, Summer Olympics has more participants than the Winter Olympics. We want to ask, like, hey, why is that? Why does Europe have more participants than other continents? Okay. And all of this, you're just looking at historic data, for this accumulated period of 100 years. You may want to go into more details, okay? And you don't do that in just a single page. So here now you can create another page like this. You still have your data, okay? So in this space here now, you perhaps may want to do something as let's just take a visual to say we want to use something like a line chart, and for this we'll be using time visuals, right? The continents and the values. Okay, so I'm just going to say the year. Okay, putting the year in here, so it's just at that x-axis bit. That's correct. The continent, right? So I also want my continent to be, I want the continent to serve as the legend, so I have the continent as the legend. Now the values, okay, the values, I want it based on the number of teams, or perhaps if you want to just use the athletes right away, okay, but it's over a period of time. Okay, it's over a period of time. Now look, so let's just take off the blank where the field is blank. Okay, and perhaps to just drag this down a bit. You want to just change your title, I could spoken a bit here, their reps over the years. Okay, I think I have a typo with the continents. Okay, so that's fine. And you still want to just add something to it, right? So we want to just add a text box either above, or below, where you want your text box to just say something, right? So now I have this here. I'm going to just work with the size. Perhaps I can drag this to just, and let's just type text to just You can move on to it, to size it, and say this shows a trend of mission amongst continents 100 years. And perhaps you want to add your observations to it, you can just drag this to know where you want to place it. You want to place it above or below the visual itself. It's your call. It's your call. But this is more of what your report would serve to show, right? So beyond the summary view, which we have in our page one here, now you now have pages to now show. Oh, so you can rename your pages, so you can double click on it, and say maybe perhaps this home, and for this now you're trying to say, oh, based on continents, remember in the home tab here we had something to show for the genders and their participation. If you want to create another, to talk about, to just talk a bit about your genders and how the level of participation, if you feel there's a skew to it, different things you want to bring about. I would really employ for you to just look at the data set from the columns here. We also have the column for sports, which really it's about the games. Okay, so if I just open this up in table view here, the one that has to do with sports. Okay, sports, so it's about the game. So you may want to look at like, hey, which games do you feel has more participants generally, more participants in terms of male, female, more participants in terms of the season, how do people fare? You want to check host cities, where it's been hosted the most. Do you feel there is a bias to this? These are areas, things for you to explore, okay, with this data set. And I really would love to hear your feedback. So this is what we'll be calling it a wrap for this session. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope it's really been a good time for you learning. It definitely has been a great time sharing with you. Thank you for tuning in, and I can't wait to hear the outcome of what you've tried to get your hands on. Bye for now.